Hello everyone, how you doing? Today I am so excited to share with you my simple recipe for gluten-free sandwich bread that is out of this world, soft and tender and like that Wonder Bread that we used to get, or maybe some of you didn't, but I did. And it is so quick and so easy to make, you won't believe it. So let's get into it and I'll show you how to make it. This recipe starts like any other of my bread recipes in a mixing bowl, and it's basically just a matter of dumping the ingredients into the bowl. Now with my newest dough hook, I like to add the liquids first and anything like that. And this consists of 540 grams of whole milk. And by the way, I tested this dairy-free and it works perfectly. So if you need to be dairy-free, go ahead. And this is 56 grams of butter that's been melted, also can be used dairy-free. And I'm adding to that 29 grams of granulated sugar, 6 grams of instant yeast, and 5 grams of whole psyllium husks. You can make this recipe without psyllium husks, and all that information will be on the recipe in the website. And then I'm adding to that 453 grams of Kim's gluten-free bread flour blend, along with 12 grams of kosher salt and 8 grams of baking powder. Baking powder is a new addition to this particular bread. I have made this bread several times before with a few alterations. This is basically my Italian bread dough. This is also similar to my other gluten-free white sandwich bread recipe, but this one does not use a tangjong. And the reason I didn't want to use that here is because I wanted something very quick, something that you can make start to finish in under 4 hours. So if you really want sandwich bread and you want it fast, this is your recipe. I'm just going to stop and scrape this down a little bit because it's not really getting fully incorporated. Feel free to do that if needed. You want to make sure all of your ingredients get fully incorporated so all that yeast has time to get through there and react with the sugar and the milk, and everything just gets well incorporated and nice and cohesive. So we'll just let this go for the usual 5 minutes, mixing on medium-high speed. And when it's done, I'm just going to scrape it into the center of the bowl, like I do with my others. And then I'm just going to cover it and let it rise until it's doubled in size. You can put this in a nice warm place, so it will take less than 2 hours, but generally like 1.5 to 2 hours is what you're looking at. All right, let's see what it looks like. This is perfect. It has doubled in size, maybe even tripled in size. So what I'm going to do now is actually knock some of that air back out of it. And because it is so sticky, because we haven't let it refrigerate like I normally do, I'm using a spatula, but I think I'm actually going to switch to my Danish dough whisk because I want to get as much air as possible out of this. This is similar to if you were to punch down dough for gluten-filled baking, and what you're going for is trying to remove as much air as possible because you want a more tight crumb to this loaf of bread so that it's resembles more of something like a Wonder Bread. If you don't have one of these Danish dough whisks, they are so cheap, and I will leave a link below for where you can find them. They're on Amazon. I'm telling you, they're probably less than $10. But let's talk now about the loaf pans used for this particular recipe. As you can see, or as you saw in the beginning, this loaf is a very tall loaf. And the best way I found to get that nice tall loaf, so you're not dealing with this teeny tiny little piece of bread to make your kids sandwiches on, right? Like, where do they even get those little teeny tiny loaf pans? But anyway, I wanted a nice substantial piece of bread, and this is what I used. These are a set of two. They come as a set of two. I'll leave a link below for where I got them on Amazon. They are Pullman style loaf pans, and they each have a lid that slides on and off. I'm not going to use the lid for this particular bake, but you can. You're just going to have a little squatter of a loaf. It'll still be a substantial size, much better than the store-bought gluten-free breads that are out there, but I'm going to show you what I do. If you don't want to invest in these two pans, as long as you have two loaf pans that are identical in size, you can do this same trick for baking, and I'll show you that in a little bit. Meanwhile, we can go ahead and get our oven preheated to 450 degrees Fahrenheit and allow this to rise while that's happening. Now see this has doubled in size, so it is about an inch over the top of the pan, and I have my other loaf pan here, identical size, that I've lined with tin foil on the top because there are 3 little ventilation holes in the bottom of it, and I want to create a nice steamy environment. So first I'm adding melted butter to the top. This is totally optional, but it does help with a softer crust. So just be very delicate when you're brushing it on there, because this is full of air and it is light and airy and just so good, you guys. I can't wait till you try this bread. This part is also totally optional. I'm slashing it with a knife. I should have wet the knife first, but I was kind of in a hurry. But you can not slash it and it'll be more of a rustic top to it. It doesn't really matter. So we get this in the oven just like this at 450, like I said, for the first 15 minutes. Then we're going to turn it down to 375 and continue baking it for another 40 to 50 minutes, or until it's nice and light when you take it out. There are a couple different ways to tell. You can stick a thermometer in there. It should register about 200, 205. You want to go for a little bit of a higher level than a normal gluten-filled bread would be. Immediately get it out of the pan and put it on a wire rack to cool. But I'm also going to take some more of that melted butter and brush it all over on the top, on the sides, even on the bottom, just to get that nice soft crust. But it will soften further upon sitting, like if you were to wrap it in a tea towel or even a plastic baggie like a zip top or a piece of plastic wrap or tin foil. It's going to soften considerably, just like that Wonder Bread that we used to love. But please, whatever you do, don't cut into it until it has fully cooled, because it will be gummy if you try to cut it when it's still warm. But before I show you how wonderful it is on the inside, I did want to show you that this bread can still be made the traditional way, that is kneading, like I'm doing here. The only difference in this was that I left it in the fridge overnight after that first initial bulk fermentation or rise. So now I'm putting it in the tin just like I had before, and I'll cover it and let it proof just the same way and bake it just the same way. Either way you want to do it is perfectly fine. All right, enough about the other stuff. Let's cut into this. I really need to show you the inside of this loaf of bread. I mean, check this out, you guys. It is such a tall loaf to begin with. It is so incredibly soft. I don't know if you can see the plushness of this loaf, but it smells wonderful. It tastes fabulous. My husband and my son both, who are not gluten-free, said that it is spot on for Wonder Bread. Now the crust is still a little firm or crusty right now because I only waited until it just cooled completely. If I were to wrap this in some plastic wrap or what have you, it's going to soften considerably, like I said before. But the very first sandwich I made with this is a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, because you know that's what you need when you have this soft a bread. So enjoy.